Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Reach Out podcast. This is your host, Juan Pablo Borges. I want to thank you all for tuning in once again. This is the ninth episode of the Reach Out podcast. Make sure to check us out on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, and make sure to follow us on Instagram, on TikTok. If you want to check my page out, I upload all the episodes on LinkedIn as well, so you might want to find me there. And yeah, appreciate you being here. Appreciate you uh, letting us be a part of your professional development journey. This episode is another one of our amazing guests. I'm very excited to introduce her. So please welcome Elisabeth Villa. Elisabeth, thank you for being here. And how's it going?
Hi, thank you for having me. It's going great. We're almost to the midweek, so it's great. It's great.
It's amazing to have you here. Um, we spoke a little bit off camera, and I know that your journey overall in the company that you are and in your previous education has been amazing. So, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Okay, so my name's Elizabeth. I live here in Houston. I attended the University of Houston. Go Cougs.
Okay.
And I graduated last summer of 2022. And a little after graduating college, about March of this year, 2023, I began my career at Hewlett Packard Enterprise. So here I am, and I'm excited. So far, so good. It's been quite the journey. So it's been good.
That is amazing. That is amazing. It's always really, really cool to talk to one of our thriving cooks or thriving alumni. It's just very inspiring, not only for me, but all of my friends at UH have told me the same thing that we look up to you guys. So thank you for doing this. And Elizabeth, it's almost the middle of July. It's hot as heck out there, very hot, middle of the summer. But I
Yeah.
want to ask you before we get on the topic, what is one of your favorite summer activities?
Honestly, yes. It's geez. Yeah, this Texas um summer, this heat is no joke. I would have to say that honestly, my favorite activity is staying indoors in the cool.
Yeah.
Um I try to not really stay outside too long. I think I tried the park a couple times and it was just way too it's just too hot. But hopefully, once we go further into the year, hopefully I can make more of the outside activities and like walks in parks and all of that. But as of now, definitely trying to stay cool indoors, and not be outside too long. So that's what I'm doing.
I totally agree with you. It's everyone that's listening is just like make sure you stay safe, make sure you stay hydrated because like
hmm hmm
it's around 100 degrees out there. I don't want to get sunburned. I get really easily sunburned. So
Yeah,
uh,
it's terrible.
definitely enjoy your summer, but stay indoors, everyone.
Yes, yes, everyone.
Today, everybody, we're going to talk about a very important topic that is how to sell yourself. How to sell yourself in the sense of interviews and every type of, I don't know, case interviews, presentations, interactions with recruiters, and those types of situations that I know a big part of the demographic of this podcast is the young folks. And we always want to have that kind of instinct on making like a great impression on other people always on. So I think it's a great, great opportunity that we have now talking with you, Elizabeth. You work, as you mentioned, at Hewlett Packard, and a lot of our University of Houston students, they tend to gravitate towards that really, really competitive company. In fact, a bunch of my friends are entering there right now, and I'm sure that this topic is very, very relevant, not only to them, but to all the young folks and all the adults as well that are listening to this right now. So, Elizabeth, looking back to your previous interviews, especially the ones for your current position at HPE, what is something valuable that you learned from them?
Wow. I think the most valuable thing that I learned with the hiring, the interview and the process was honestly just keeping true to myself and being honest. Definitely not wanting to oversell myself too much to where, you know, you're not being genuine and you're not being yourself. So I think throughout the journey, you know, of, like I mentioned, of the process, the interview process, I wanted to make sure that I kind of really kept true to myself and selling who I really am, and then just being able to have that connection with them, with whoever was interviewing me. Even though, you know, a lot of the things have moved virtual, I feel like it's very good to be able to still make yourself presentable. But honesty, I think, is going to be very important, because I think even though, you know, you're across the screen, people can really tell if, you know, you're being genuine or not.
That is very, very important to highlight. Honesty
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
just the root to having not only a genuine conversation, but being able to show your true intentions with
Mm-hmm.
anything. And I don't know about you, Elizabeth, but to me, a job interview is a perfect opportunity to see if not only you align with the company, but also the company values align with your values too.
Correct. Correct. Yes, I definitely agree with that. That was actually that's another thing that I was going to say. That's perfect. You said that great, because um, it's not only because if you think about it, you know, they're kind of trying to sell themselves too, I guess, in a way. You have to make sure that you're who you are, and where you come from and your values, and you know, that aligns with their culture. So that's definitely something you want to see and make sure that's going to be a good fit for you as well. Because overall that's going to um, you know, that's going to show in how you work and how you feel at work. Because if you think about it, we spend the majority of our time at work. You know, we spend a lot of time at work and interacting, you know, in the office, or what have you. And so making sure that that also aligns to us, I think, is very important. So yeah, I definitely agree with that.
100%, 100%.
Yes.
Elizabeth, I remember listening to this man a few days ago, and he works
Mm-hmm.
on personal branding and on marketing from a lot of big companies. And he was saying how whenever people are asked questions like, "Why should we hire you?" they just tend to go for the obvious route and say that, "Oh, there's like regular terms like team player. I'm a team player. I work well under pressure. I have a passion for this industry, etc." Uh, and to me, whenever you go for those obvious questions, it doesn't come out as genuine as it should. It's
Mm-hmm.
just a little bland, and it's easy for everyone to say the same thing. But then he talks about how knowing your audience, you're really preparing yourself by understanding their needs, allows you to do a better job at portraying yourself. So,
Right.
Elizabeth, why would you say it is important to know like your audience doing your research before interviews?
Yeah, I think that's very important, because I mean, just like in anything, any, you know, anywhere you're speaking, anywhere, you know, for instance, here, you know, we want to, you know, talk to that certain group, you know, those individuals. Or if you're in another podcast talking about something else, talking about sports, you want to make sure that you're able to connect with those fans, and, you know, those sports fans that, you know, are going to be there for that. So it's definitely important to know your audience and know at the end of the day what they're going to get from you, from listening to you, from, you know, in this instance, from joining, you know, the company, why you're a good candidate for, you know, the role that, you know, they're wanting to hire you for. I think it's important to be able to show that, and show them and let them know why you're a good fit. You know, of course, team players, good, you know, all those, you know, you know, the basics of what a good, you know, a person that has good work ethic should be. But also being able to show that, you know, my I know my biggest thing was, you know, showing my numbers and showing those facts, like, look, I was able to work, you know, I was in this situation and I was able to work through this situation, and I was, you know, kind of just showing them a history of why I would be a great fit, and being able to have them understand that and see why I would be a great fit for the role. I think it's very important. So making that connection, doing research, kind of figuring out what they're looking for, and see if you're a good candidate for that role. so that they can understand and they can see, okay, this person is a good candidate, or at the moment, actually, we feel this way, and we feel like you're not maybe the best candidate for this role. So definitely doing research, definitely knowing your target, their target, back and forth. It goes both ways. I think it's very important to be able to fit in a role that it's going to be a great fit for both, for sure.
Definitely. Elizabeth, you talked about some very key points that go down to interpretation as finding common ground with you and the interviewer in this specific situation. And not only that contributes to having a genuine conversation, but it kind of tilts the balance to your favor whenever they're considering candidates, because everybody knows that a recruiter for a big company like HP, they look at thousands of resumes at a time, and they just hear the same stories, the same skills from very, very similar competitors. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like keeping that in mind, always finding that common ground, like that example you gave with the sports fans, is very, very important whenever it's the time to answer some really important questions in an interview. And
Correct.
I think that's very, very um, essential, not only in the professional development realm, but also anywhere. It's important for you to know who you're talking to, know
Mm-hmm.
what are their interests. And the reason why I say this is because um, I was talking a few days ago with one of the deans at Bauer College of Business, Mr. Dr. Roger Barriscout, and
Mm-hmm.
we were talking about this podcast, and I was telling him about some of the challenges that I encounter that I didn't foresee me encountering those problems, and
Mm-hmm.
he just came back to the main point that you gave, which is that you got to understand what the people want to hear, but most importantly, who is the best person for them to give them
Mm-hmm.
that advice. And that
Correct.
is something that is going to always resound within myself and within this program. And also, for that reason, I want to give a little thank you and a little shout out to Roger, if you're listening to this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why this is the episode today. That's why you're here, because Elizabeth, we were talking in the past. You have a story to tell, and
Mm-hmm.
you graduated from UOH, and I know that you've been in your role for not a long time.
Mm-hmm.
However, you're able to give that insight that the students want to hear, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So,
Mm-hmm.
with that said, I want to ask you, Elizabeth, in
Mm-hmm.
this new adventure of your life that is working at HP, what have been some of the greater challenges that you've encountered?
Wow. Um, That's a great question. Yeah, because like you mentioned, it's been just a short time with HPE, and so far it's been great. Honestly, it's been quite the experience, um, just quite the adventure overall. Just coming in, being new to the tech world, especially for me, was something that was I think my biggest challenge. I knew just a little bit, but I feel like coming in and having that open mind and wanting to learn, I think that's been kind of helping me through that challenge of just feeling clueless when it came to like, oh my gosh, I don't know anything about tech. I don't know what you're saying. Like it sounds like gibberish. Um, but coming in with that open mind and knowing that, I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna be given the tools that I need in order to be successful in this role. I think that was another thing that's really helped me with that challenge. So honestly, that's been my biggest thing, just coming in to something so new that I've never really kind of worked with or anything like that, had previous experience in. That was the biggest challenge, for sure. I remember going through all the training and some of the things that they were trying to teach us and whatnot. And it was a lot. It was just like a big dump of just like water, just information being dumped on us. But it was great. Again, going in there with an open mind, I think, is something that's really helped me and being patient with myself and knowing like it's okay. Like they're giving me the tools, so I gotta take them and then put them in my toolbox, and then when I need them, kind of go back. Um, but yeah, that's long answer, but
That is
definitely the challenge has been just going into a new industry that I just didn't have any clue about. So yeah.
that is. I think that type of stories are just amazing because you are getting it through the rough part, like right from the get-go, and that's how
Mhm.
you realize, like, man, I gotta fight for this. I gotta fight for what I want. You know, you went through
Yeah.
college, and now it's a whole different thing. You already studied for this, and this is what you wanted, and now you had to fight for it even more.
Oh
So I think
yeah.
it's just amazing.
Yeah, 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 definitely. Like you said, it's like mentioned, yeah, like you put yourself, you go to college, you have a goal in mind, and when you reach that, maybe you have that next goal already towards your end of college, or right after. You're just like, okay, I'm done. What's next?
Hmm.
And then you get into that next step, and then you got to work hard. You're like, okay, I got here now. Let me work through this and on to the next goal. So it's definitely like something that's mentally, I've kind of been working through and working on, as far as like what my next thing is, my next challenge. What do I want to do next? Where do I want to go? So yes, I can definitely agree with that on that.
100%. Yeah, and I think it's something that is sometimes kind of funny just because, at least for students,
Mhm.
whenever they land that internship, it's like, okay, now I can chill out because I have my internship. But now it's like, now is the time you actually
No.
start to work, you know?
Yes, no. Now the real, like the fun, just
Mm,
the tough, the whole thing starts. I feel like it starts there
mm.
when you're done. Yeah, for sure.
That is very true. Yeah. Elizabeth, let's talk about the combinations of actions and results. I think it is a great thing to have skills, but if you don't know how to market those skills by having results and knowing, most importantly, how to explain those results to a company and to someone that may not be as technically uh, like professional or like knowing the terminology that you know, it's very important to explain them that information and make them understand. So, Elizabeth, I want to ask you when you have to talk to a client or an important stakeholder, how do you make sure that they feel understood, valued, and confident with working with you?
Right. That's a good question. I would say my biggest thing when I'm talking to, a customer, a potential customer, or any I have an interaction with them, is basically just making them feel and knowing and communicating that you understand, that what they're going through, their issue, your understanding of where they're coming from. You understand a little bit about like what they're explaining to you about, and then being able to communicate that with them, saying, okay, I understand you have XYZ problem, but this is where I can come in and help you, or this is where I'm here to, kind of just your role in that situation with them. I think that's been the biggest thing for me. Just being empathetic with them and having them understand that their pain, what they're going through, you understand their problem, and that kind of makes them kind of put a barrier down a little bit, to where they're like, okay, like maybe this person does understand, like maybe she's not completely like here and she's not in my role, but she knows what it feels like to be in my shoes. I think that's been the biggest thing. And then I would say the another biggest thing is just being honest. I felt like being honest with them and transparent from the get go, and not over promising something that I know I can't do. That's been very helpful too. There's been situations. I think it was maybe Friday, where actually I was on the phone. I was with a customer, and he asked me something and I didn't know the answer. But instead of like trying to like explain some gibberish or tell him da 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 da, I was like, look, that's a great question. And I don't have the exact answer for you, and I don't want to give you the wrong answer, but let's point you to the right person. And I felt like he kind of again put those walls down, and he's like, okay, that's fine. Like if you can direct me, so forth and so on. And so really just being honest with them, and feeling just empathizing with them. I think those are the biggest two things that I've seen, have helped me kind of with communicating with, customers, whoever I'm talking to.
Empathy and honesty, they're just the one of the like two of the most important traits that everyone should take into account whenever talking to anyone. But in this specific situation, referring to talking to potential clients or already existing clients, whenever there's money in the line and company interests in between, it's very easy to forget about those traits, forget about being empathetic, forget about the human aspect of those interactions. And as you said, people tend to lower the barriers whenever they feel understood, whenever they feel listened to,
Mm-hmm.
and and I think that is just very, very important. So always keep that in mind, especially whenever it's like a job interview or an internship interview. There's also interest from both parties that need to be um, heard and need to be highlighted, like
Mm-hmm.
the potential salary of a student or the potential abilities the recruiter is looking for in the
Right.
company.
Mm-hmm.
But just keep it in mind that everyone is just human beings and
Mm-hmm.
they want to feel understood. They want to feel comfortable whenever they're talking to anyone, regardless of what the situation is.
Right. Right.
Elizabeth, moving on, if you were to interview any potential employee for your current role, what would be some of the characteristics and values that would make the ideal candidate?
Ooh, that's a great question. In my role, um, I think um, one of the top things that that would look for is someone who is not a quitter,
Hmm.
um, who is tough. I think in my role specifically, interacting with different customers and different scenarios and all the things that I've personally just in my short time have kind of come across. I think those are the two things skills that I've had to sharpen, um, because it's a little tough, with like you're saying, these are other people that you're communicating with, and so it's very hard sometimes for us to forget that, and to be so focused and like, okay, this is a role, and you kind of get in the zone. But I think if we keep in mind that this is another person, and we're gonna get no's, and we're gonna get all kinds of just no's and this and that, and all the things. And so if we stay, if we stay tough, and we're not gonna quit by the first five no's or turn downs or rejections or anything like that, then that if we can use that to kind of encourage us, to keep going, I think that would be very key. Um, and then some of the values I think would be, like the ones I've already mentioned to you. Again, would be that just the honesty, being yourself and not really trying to, kind of portray someone you're not. I think those two are very important, because at the end of the day, you're going to be working with customers. You're going to be working with either, like I mentioned, potential customers or current customers that you want them to see you as who you are and transparent with them as possible. So I think that those would be the key things that I would definitely be looking for someone who wants to be in the role that I am now.
I think that's very important to highlight the fact that being able to don't quit and just be able to just go through it knowing that it's going to be hard. It's a very, very valuable trait in anyone. Just because it's very easy to say, it's very easy to just assume that, okay, I feel like that's very straightforward. But whenever things are going south and it's your head on the line, then you have to be very careful on decision making, but
Yeah.
also keep your calm and know that if you just keep working hard, it's gonna get
Hmm.
it's gonna get better. Um,
Hmm.
I think that trait specifically, I'd had to see it firsthand during my internship right now. There's been a few
Hmm.
moments where I just been like, there's bad days, there's just like moments where I forget
Hmm.
that things can go wrong and people can make mistakes and I can make mistakes. And at the moment, it may seem like the end of the world. Like, what are people going to think about me? Do I even deserve to be in here if I make these types of mistakes? But it's just okay to make them, It's okay to
Right.
understand your place and that you cannot have anything that you want just right now, just because, it's all a process. So,
Yeah.
um, that brings me to my next question, Elizabeth. Everybody makes mistakes, especially when entering a new organization and a new role. So I bring this up especially for all of the summer interns right now that are nervous and maybe scared to make those mistakes. So,
Hmm.
Elizabeth, what advice would you give to them?
Oh, what advice I would give to the interns? I mean, honestly, I would say, have fun with just learning and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Honestly, I feel like what that was one of the biggest things that they've highlighted for us since day one. And I feel like that's great. I had never really worked in a company that really pushes, or I guess not pushes, but is okay with you making mistakes. Because I think their whole, I guess, mindset on that is, if, we don't make mistakes, then we don't really learn. It's a little, I mean, we learn in other ways, but I think in mistakes, like, we really get a chance to look back on how we can, if reflecting on it, it helps us understand how we can better ourselves, how we can maybe do something another way, how we can, all these things. So I would say definitely don't be afraid to make mistakes. And number two, with that, don't be afraid to ask questions. To ask any question. I've heard this a lot in my life, but there is no silly, dumb question. There is no bad question. Um, because all the questions it teaches someone, it informs someone about something. Whether it's just you, or whether it's you and, your neighbor who had the same question. Um, but I would say those things, definitely. It's okay to make a mistake. It's okay. Um, Definitely learn from it. Let's not, repeat it 4 times, or whatever. But and then don't be afraid to ask questions, for sure. Reach out. If that person doesn't know the answer, I'm sure they'll get you to someone who does know the answer and who can inform you, and give you the best tools that they have. Um, for your question.
That is that is the best advice, I think.
Mhm.
Uh, I feel like I needed to hear that to some extent because like it just gets tough sometimes. I do just like recently. I've been working on a couple of projects in my supply chain industry, and sorry, my supply chain internship. And there's a lot of things that I don't know, a lot of things that like it's half the time I just have to
Mhm.
do what I have to do, and
Mhm.
the other half I just learn what it means, you know?
Mhm.
So I'm just learning while doing, and
Uh-huh.
that is like perfect formula to making a bunch of like mistakes while
Mhm.
learning.
Yeah.
And for that reason, I want to just like give advice that know your limits. Just like you said, don't just try to um, convince people that you can do more than what you actually can do,
Mhm.
because it's not beneficial for anyone, and it
Yeah, I
just
know.
puts you in the same position that you are in the beginning. So,
Yes. Yes,
so
exactly. Definitely agree with you on that one. Definitely, like you said, knowing your limits. If I only know steps 1 through 5, let's not pretend that I know steps 1 through 10,
mhm.
because like you said, it's not going to be beneficial for me. It's not going to be beneficial for any of the parties involved. And that just might make things worse than simply just asking the questions. Hey, what are steps, 4 to 10 or whatever the rest of, what and what you can ask on. I think that's you said that great. That was great.
Yeah, and I want to add, obviously it's cool to make mistakes. It's very important to ask questions, but I also want to add, be grateful for the people that are there to help you. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
think this always strive to add that little gratefulness in every episode. And I don't know if he hears this, but Kaushik is a great guy. He works in the office that I work for,
Mm-hmm.
at SLB, and he's been giving me a ton of help in everything. And he's a really busy guy, and I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
that everyone that's an intern and asks questions, they're asking questions to people that they're not there only to help you. They're there because it's their job and they have stuff to do. So
Yeah.
be grateful for them. Be grateful for those people. Always say thank you. Always be nice to them. So that's a little shout out from me to Kaushik. Kaushik, if you're hearing this, thank you, man. 'Cause you
Yeah.
know how.
Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Going back, this is one of the last questions. Going back to the interview process and what we talked about, could you provide some insights into, obviously, to whatever extent you might feel comfortable, uh,
Mm-hmm.
some insights into the interview process at HPE and the type of questions or scenarios that they typically focus on?
Yeah. Let's see, because it's been a while. It's been a few months now. This is back in February, I believe. I want to say one of the questions that stood out to me was they actually, like I mentioned, they actually asked me, um, I think they asked me something about like a situation that I had been in where the customer was upset or you had to, where I had to intervene and how did I handle that situation? Or I think it was like, have you ever been in a sticky situation or a difficult situation where you couldn't handle it? What did you do? So I think from that sense, I think they wanted to kind of see how I handled, of course, like a difficult situation. And that was one of the questions that I stood out to me because, being that I had, some work history, I did immediately jump to a story in my mind. And I was like, look, this was the situation and this was, what I did. I remember they did ask me that. They, of course, also asked, um, like you said, what are my qualities, as a person and why me? Um, so those are a couple. And then one last one that I do remember that I remember because I was so scared of this question before I thought it might be a question and I'm like, what am I going to say, or maybe they won't ask it. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll just cross that bridge when I get there. And the question was, why technology?
Mm,
You know, and again, like I mentioned previously, I had no no knowledge of technology, and in my mind quick I was like, oh, do I make something up? Like, no, let me not make anything. I don't know anything. So my mind went racing and I had a feeling that that was kind of going to be a question that was going to be asked. But then I was just honest. I was like, you know what? I know nothing about technology. I've never worked in this industry. I've never, had the chance to be able to jump and grasp any kind of information. Um, but I said, I am eager to learn. I feel like technology is amazing. I know technology is changing. I mean, we see it around us all the time. I think it's constantly just new things, just all the great things coming out with technology. So I did mention that. I said, I feel like technology is amazing. I feel like, it's changing, it's growing. There's something exciting about it every day. Um, I think they were very positive about my answer. They're like, well, that's great. definitely they were understanding, and they were just very comforting when they said, it's okay. We understand, but I think what did it was just being open minded, and being honest and telling them, hey, I don't know anything about it, but I know it's exciting. I know I want to learn. I know it's growing, and I know it's changing every day. So those were my, um, kind of what I had in mind for that answer. So those were the few questions that I do remember off the top of my head, um, that they kind of were, kind of brought up, in the interview.
That is amazing, and it's great to hear from someone that actually went through the whole process and succeeded by doing it, and succeeded by being honest and being open-minded, like you said. So I think that's a great way to end the questions focused on the topic, and moving on to the last question of this podcast was my favorite question.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, what makes you happy?
What makes me happy? Oh goodness. I feel like honestly, I feel like what makes me happy is just the as cheesy as it sounds, just the little things in life. Getting home and then seeing my dog, welcoming me at the door. That makes me happy. Being able to kind of relax and watch some TV. On an evening, after work, that makes me happy. So it's truly just the little things in life that really bring me joy. And then just surrounding myself with great friends, positive people, I think they also bring a lot of happiness. So those are just a few to name.
That is amazing. I love that answer. You're so right about that. And to everybody listening, don't be afraid to reach out. It's not about the things that you can get from people, but it's about building that genuine relationship based on
Hmm.
honesty, uh,
Yes.
and based on love, and everything. So yeah, have a great one. I'll see you in the next one. Okay. Bye
Thank you
bye.
so much for having me.
Of course.
Bye.